Carolina This Week with Tim McGinnis.
Good morning and thanks for joining us. Believe it or not, it's coming up right around the corner. Voters will be headed to the polls to pick a GOP nominee from the state of South Carolina. Of course, we have the First in the South primary. A lot of candidates have come through. This morning, we're joined by one of the candidates' wives, the First Lady of Texas, Anita Perry, Rick Perry's wife. Thank you very much for being here this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
First, I have to ask you, just because of the news that came out actually yesterday about Newt Gingrich getting an endorsement from one of the big newspapers in New Hampshire. It looks like Newt Gingrich and Mitt Romney are kind of securely fitted at the top of the polls right now. Can your husband overcome the wide margin that's been building between the top of the race and him?
I think he can. We've been behind before, 25 points down in a race, and you know, he won by a large majority. So we know that 61% of the voters here in South Carolina are still undecided. And that's what we hear about Iowa and New Hampshire. So this race is very fluid. So I think so. We work hard.
You've been out campaigning for him a lot. You're one of those husband and wife teams that really kind of goes after it. What do you think happened? Where was the breakdown? What do you think took him away from voters, and what do you think will put him back into voters' heads? Well,
I think it was a remark that he made at one of the debates, and was talking about immigration. And in Texas, we have to educate our immigrants that are there. It's by federal law that we have to do that. And our legislature in 2001, with only 4 dissenting votes out of 181, said we want to educate the immigrants that are here. They don't get a state subsidy, they don't get a break, they pay the same state tuition, and they're working on citizenship. And he actually said, well, you know, I mean, he's a sitting governor. He had no choice to do this. He said, you know, I think those that maybe don't agree with this, maybe don't have a heart. And I think really that was an insult. And I told him so. I said that was absolutely wrong. That was the wrong thing for you to say. And then he got attacked from another candidate and didn't have time to explain his position. So I really think that was it. And
there was the oops moment, I remember. But there's all but in the debate since, he seems to be on a little bit more secure footing. Do you think he's getting better at the debates?
Oh, I do. This is the first time he's been on the national stage. And what have we done? 10 debates, where some people have been doing national debates for 6 years. It's not their first time to run for president. Remember, he is a sitting governor. We had legislative session, we had a veto period, then we had to really get out there and decide if people were ready for another full-throated conservative like my husband is, and we had to make sure we could raise the money, which he did, $17 million in 47 days. So, you know, we really had to work hard and hit the ground running. And he didn't have as much time to prep as he should have. But I heard him say yesterday, you know, he's getting more and more comfortable with these debates, and he's done very, very well. That oops moment, some people said, what did you think? What did you do? And I wanted to say, if I could have remembered the word, I would have put it in his mouth. Yeah. Human moment caught at that time. We all have them, unfortunately. You know, not on national TV.
That's not where you want to have it.
No, you don't.
You brought up immigration. Let's talk about immigration real quick. South Carolina recently passed its immigration law that's controversial. The federal government's looking at it. But Texas really has a better, I would think the Texans have a better understanding of the problems with immigration than any other state. I was talking with one of your people before the show who informed me of Texas, the size of Texas's border, which would stretch from basically Beaufort, South Carolina, all the way to Maine.
Correct.
That's a huge tract of land. So when people talk about building a fence, a 1,200-mile fence might not be the most feasible answer.
No, and plus the law enforcement that we have on the border now say you can build a fence, but they're going to go under it, they're going to go through it, they're going to go over it. So it doesn't really matter. They are determined people, they're going to get through. But my husband thinks that, you know, you put boots on the ground, you put strategic air surveillance and strategic fencing in those areas that are really the most threat. And he's tough on immigration. He's strong on it, and he's had to work with both sides, the Texans and the Mexican government, but it's the federal government's responsibility to protect that border. And until we can do that and the federal government steps up to the plate, it's not going to happen. We as Texans decided to give $400 million of our own tax money to protect that border. So federal government's been an abject failure of doing that.
Do you think it is more work with Mexico that needs to be, I mean, is there something that could be done from the Mexican side of the border to thwart this?
Well, there's a huge problem with Mexico. We know that Hezbollah and Hamas is there, and we know about the narco trafficking and the prostitution across the border and the sexual assault and the murders. we've got to have help. And yes, the Mexican government would work with us. You know, they're going to have the elections about the same time that we are. They're one term, one 6-year term. But we're hopeful. We work with them all the time.
We talked a little bit before we started taping about Black Friday and how it was a wonderful Black Friday. Of course, the show is airing on Sunday. We're taping this on Monday, and we're hearing news that Black Friday was fantastic. What would your husband do to get people spending money again, so we don't have to depend on Black Friday to bail us out of a year-long deficit for some stores?
Well, since 2009, Texas has created 40% of all the jobs that have been created in the nation. We've created actually 1 million jobs in the past 10 years, where we as a nation have lost 2 million jobs. Government cannot create the jobs, but government can create the climate, and we do that by keeping our taxes low, our regulatory system fair and predictable. We've got a tort reform that's helping us tremendously in Texas. We've got doctors moving. People want to come there and practice medicine because they know they won't be sued frivolously. So you set that climate, and he's done very well. Texas is, you know, the 13th largest standalone economy in the world.
Wow. Parts of our viewing area include counties that have 20% unemployment. Just we're one of the worst states when it comes to unemployment, and this is one of the worst areas when it comes to unemployment.
I heard that.
Does what worked in Texas worked in Texas work for the whole country? Would it work for rural South Carolina?
We truly do. We think it will. And I had lunch with business leaders today, and some of the same things that you were saying that we do in Texas, the regulations that are strangling us. The interstate highway system. I understand you've got a problem moving people out of Myrtle Beach in case there's a hurricane, and we certainly have that in Texas, and we've got the interstate system to carry it. We've got a port, we've got a deep water port in Brownsville. That was something else we discussed. So there are a lot of things. I mean, Myrtle Beach is great for your economy and your tourism dollars, but there are some things that could be done to help bring tourism money and more people into this economy here and help that.
And I want to talk a little bit more about the issues that the Grand Strand faces that are kind of unique, which include Interstate 73 and a few other things. Let's take a quick break. We'll talk a little bit more when we come back.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much. Welcome back to Carolina This Week. My guest this week is the First Lady of Texas, Anita Perry, of course, Governor Rick Perry's wife, who's running for president right now. We were talking before the break about some issues that face the Grand Strand, Myrtle Beach in particular. Interstate 73 being a big one, and we're looking for federal money to help get that here. Would a Perry administration stand in the way of federal dollars going toward a project like that, you think?
No, he wouldn't. In fact, you know, Texas tourism dollars are $56.7 billion a year, and we understand how important it is to put in the infrastructure that you need. I mean, tourism dollars are dollars that are just dumped here, basically. So no, he's all business. He's a pro-business governor, and he'll be a pro-business president.
Other issues that affect the Grand Strand, of course, tourism. We're always trying to get more and more tourists to visit Myrtle Beach. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 million come during a season now. You come from a pro-tourism state. One issue that we faced on the federal level is our glass pool enclosures. I don't know if any of the business leaders talked to you about that, but it was a FEMA regulation that you couldn't have glass pool enclosures. And a lot of these businesses, they have them in the wintertime. And you talk about getting rid of regulation. Is that the type of regulation that you would want to see done away with?
That is strangling our small business owners and our entrepreneurs, and you never know if it's going to change tomorrow. You might put the regulation in today and it's going to change tomorrow. Absolutely, we have to have regulations that are fair and predictable. People are afraid to build, they're afraid to hire, they're afraid to do anything to improve their business because they don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Tell me what the governor has, what has his mood been like over these past few weeks when he went from basically front runner to middle to somewhere behind the middle of the pack.
Right.
Has he been keeping, are his spirits up? Is he ready to continue fighting?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I was somewhere and it was the 236th anniversary of the Marines, and I think that was after one of the debates, and we just said, you know what, if the Marines can fight for our country for 236 years, we can certainly fight. And I think maybe he's best when he's down. Yes, we knew that we felt like we would be received favorably when we first started, but we knew we had never been vetted on the national level. So we had to do that. But I really think when people look at my husband, Rick Perry, and hear what he's saying and examine the policies that he's laid out, they're going to be very pleased with what they see and hear. And like I mentioned before, the electorate has not made up their minds yet. 70%, 61 to 70% are not going to make up their minds till right before they vote.
He talked about his tax plan. I thought he had a unique way of explaining it when he pulled out the postcard and said that, you know, this would be about as big as your form would be.
Right.
An optional flat tax, I believe, was
Right.
part of his proposal. Has he changed it all on that? Because the flat taxes have kind of come up, especially after Herman Cain's 999 plan and some other ones.
Yeah.
Is he sticking by his flat tax
He
plan?
is 20% flat tax, or if you like the plan you're under now, you can keep that. That's an option for you. But what he loves about the other one is it's the size of a postcard, maybe a little bit larger, that he said even Timothy Geithner can get his filed on time. And it's very easy with the exemptions and the deductibles that you have. Also in his tax plan, it's something that I really like. It gets rid of the death tax. And what we really feel like, you know, if you lose a loved one, you shouldn't have to lose your home or your family farm because you've lost it and you've got to pay into the death tax. So it's a really great plan. And with that option of 20%, or if you're paying less, you can pay less.
Taxes, health care. You were a practicing nurse for a number of years, 17 years, I believe. I've heard you attack the Obamacare as socialized medicine. My father was a physician. I used to hear him bandy around the word socialized medicine, and it was something he was afraid of. Do you think that national health care is socialized medicine? And what should your husband do if he gets elected? What should he do to fix it?
Well, first of all, my father's a small doctor, a family practice doctor also in the 1970s. He told me this. You know, he said, we take that money from the federal government, they're going to teach us, they're going to tell us how to practice medicine. And as a nurse in administration in the hospital, I saw the regulations that came back then. And yes, it is awful. They're going to tell us who's going to basically live, who's going to die, what medications they're going to get, who's going to survive. And we think about heartwarming stories, I mean really not heartwarming, but very cold-hearted stories about babies that wouldn't live. You know, that's not our choice. And so really, I want everyone to have the best healthcare system that they can in the world. My friends in England send me articles all the time on their nationalized healthcare system and how people are left to die. And I don't want that for Americans. So what would he do? He would take a big Sharpie out of his pocket and veto Obamacare if it's still there, and hopefully it won't be there.
Some would argue that the insurance companies have gotten so big that they're basically doing that now, and they're the ones who are running the shot. So do you want the insurance companies, or do you want the government telling the doctors what to do? Is there something that needs to be done at some level about health care in general?
Well, I do think the insurance companies have gotten a little bit out of line. You know, the pharmaceutical companies probably also. But so I do think that, you know, they listened maybe to one group and didn't listen to all the groups. I don't think they listened to the physicians. The majority of physicians that I know are not happy with Obamacare. You asked me if it was socialized medicine? Absolutely. In my opinion, it is. When your choice is taken away from you and you cannot get the best care and you have to wait in line for 6 months or 8 months for a surgery, you know, that's not care. We've got the best healthcare system in the world. Why in the world would we want to change it to not only healthcare that is not as good, and it will bankrupt so many of our states? Just the regulations alone and becoming in compliance with them. Our money, we're in a recession. We don't have money to be feeding our families. We sure don't have money to be trying to fight regulations, more regulations with Obamacare.
Quickly, I just want to touch on foreign policy with troops coming out of Iraq by Christmas time, deadlines now being set in Afghanistan. Where does your husband stand on the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq?
You know, nobody likes war. And as a mother, you know, I don't want to see my children or my grandchildren go to war, or my friends, and my friends that are in the military. We don't like war. War is inevitable, though, when you are attacked. He truly feels like telling the enemy when we're going to withdraw our troops gives them an open door, and it's not right. He's the only one on the stage to have worn the uniform of the military. He volunteered, was a C-130 pilot in the Air Force, and he knows we work daily with the National Guard in Texas. So he's very strong on foreign policies, and one thing that I really want to stress, he will keep us safe, and I truly, truly feel that.
Last question for you. I usually ask this of the candidate, but I'm going to ask you. Why should I vote for your husband?
Because He's genuine, he's real, he tells the truth, he won't skate around the edges. He knows our country's in trouble. And to get jobs back and jumpstart our economy, get rid of the IRS as we know it now, and keep us safe.
All right. Texas First Lady Anita Perry, thanks for stopping by today.
Thank you for having me.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.